All right, thank you all for being here at the Pennsylvania State Capitol on this chilly morning to hear what I have to say to the Select Committee, since they're not listening, and to ask me questions. You might say we are out in the cold today. Members of the Capitol Press Corps have given me more consideration today than has the Pennsylvania House Republican Committee that was formed to undemocratically remove the Philadelphia District Attorney from office. I'm here today, Friday, October 20th. It is shortly after 9 o'clock in the morning, which was the date and the time when the Select Committee last week, on Saturday, asked me to appear before them in a closed-door hearing, with no access for the press or the public. I am here. Where are they? Reminds me of the Betson's Furniture commercial. Where'd everybody go? I am here. Where are they? You should know the entire sequence of events that has led to my coming to the Capitol today for a hearing that the Select Committee now refuses to hold. Last Saturday night, the Select Committee made a request to my counsel, this was October the 15th, that I appear before them at 9 a.m. today to offer testimony under oath, behind closed doors, and out of view of the press with no access for the public. I previously said multiple times, I will be happy to appear. Let me speak. Let me talk. Let me communicate. Let me answer your concerns. Repeatedly, I had said that, and this was especially curious, considering that the Select Committee had conducted 2 days of hearings held by the committee on September the 29th and 30th in Philadelphia that were live streamed and were attended by the media and members of the public. Now, in truth, there were very limited members of the public, as the committee had security guards turn away people at certain time periods and turn away people they did not like, frankly. They were letting certain ones in, at the same time they were excluding others. But at least there was a public airing in the sense that it was available by video. Even though I had asked to be able to speak at that time and was denied that, again, at least there was something like a public hearing. There were also more people outside than inside. And there were more people outside than inside because Philadelphians came in large numbers holding signs and placards that said, "You can't impeach us," and committing that you could not erase their votes, no matter what other county you were from, just because it was a superheated political cycle. I was refused the opportunity to testify at that time after formally asking through my legal counsel on September the 21st that I be permitted to attend and speak at the public hearings. The Select Committee at that time flat out refused. So let's just be clear the big picture here. They're all about the sort of kind of public, not really public, but sort of kind of public hearings when they are condemning the DA's office, accusing the DA's office, and picking the witnesses who will testify about the DA's office. But when we say, can we answer the first hearing? No. Can we answer the second hearing? No. And then when they finally say, okay, now you can come and talk under oath, the condition, there will be no public and there will be no press. On Tuesday, October the 18th, 3 days ago, my legal counsel confirmed my willingness to testify and answer questions at a public hearing. Select Committee refused because this political stunt ostensibly involves matters of very significant and very important public concern, and because the votes cast by Philadelphians in overwhelming numbers in 2 elections are at stake. My legal counsel on the 19th of October asked that I be allowed to testify in executive session. So let me make sure we all get this. Let me testify in public. Let the people hear what you are doing. Let them hear what my answers are. Ask me any questions you want under oath with basically no preparation of what they'll be. I'll answer all of them. No. It's got to be private. No public, no press. We then say, all right, I'll tell you what. We'll give you your private session. We'll give you your private session. No press, no public. It's only one thing we want. We want a recording. We want notes and testimony. We want a video. We want a recording. That's all we asked. A recording that we could use and they could use. I can understand. They had more people outside at the other hearings. That's bad politics for them. I can understand that. Their answer was no. You get no record of what we asked you and what you said. We get it. And we, the committee, get to use it however we want, or not use it at all. I mean, honestly, there are things that are surprising, and then there are things that are jaw-dropping. But in a democratic society, to me, that is absolutely stunning. The Select Committee has repeatedly refused to hear from me, even though I am the target of its, quote, investigation, unquote, and I have expressly asked to testify before the Select Committee on numerous occasions. I think it's pretty clear that they're not interested in conducting a fair and transparent investigation. A committee sincerely inquiring about the practices of a district attorney would have leapt at the chance to hear from and to question the individual it is investigating. The story actually gets a little deeper here. Let me tell you a little bit about the committee. So Philadelphia, like the rest of the state and like the country, has gone through a truly terrible spike in gun violence. But this committee only wants to look at Philadelphia. It doesn't want to look at the other counties in Pennsylvania, and there's reason to look. If you actually look at the counties where the sponsors and where the committee members come from, over the same 2-year period when Philadelphia was experiencing a terrible 59% increase in homicides, they were doing worse. Washington County, home of one of the sponsors, Representative O'Neill, had an 800% increase in homicides when Philly was having a truly terrible 59%. Josh Kale, Beaver County, 250% increase when Philly was having 59. Adams County, that would be Representative Ecker, 300% increase in homicides. If you take the counties represented by the sponsors of the Select Committee and by the members of the Select Committee, and if you average all of those counties for the same 2-year period that I'm talking about, their average increase in homicides is higher than Philadelphia County. So someone please help me here. When the Democrats said, okay, you want to study law and order, you want to study crime, let's study the whole state. Something I would have invited, and frankly, I invite it right now. Republicans said, oh no, we're just looking at Philly. We're just looking at Philly right now in a superheated election cycle where part of the Republican playbook, as you well know, is to point a finger at large, diverse cities and say large, diverse cities are lawless. Does that remind you of anything? You ever heard that before? Those of you in the press are students of history. You're aware of the Southern strategy. I encourage you, go watch the video of Richard Nixon and Spiro Agnew in 1968 at the Republican convention, standing up there, and what word is coming out of Richard Nixon's mouth as he points to one large, diverse city after another? Lawlessness, lawlessness, lawlessness. Now, the irony, of course, is that Richard Nixon was a criminal, and so was Spiro Agnew. Their crimes included bribery, burglary, conspiracy, and he ended up out of office as a consequence. A very different situation than what we see here. What we see here is the same old playbook, which is about coded and racist messaging. It's about blaming the biggest city in Pennsylvania with the most diverse population for having the same national struggle that we have with gun violence everywhere, and even having increases that are less than the committee's counties. There is no integrity to this process. If there was, and I would join them and help them every step of the way, they would look at the entire state, and they would look at some real solutions and some things that can be done to make it better. We have repeatedly noted that the Select Committee's true purpose, explicitly so, according to Representative Ecker, was to try to find a reason to support impeaching the Philadelphia District Attorney, even though I am accused of no criminal offense and I am accused of no form of corruption, which is the legal basis for impeachment. It is also the only historical basis that has ever existed in centuries in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Straight up, this is an effort to impeach someone for political purposes who has done nothing corrupt and nothing illegal because they want to erase Philadelphia's votes. Straight up, that's what it is. They want to impeach our ideas. They want to erase Philadelphia's votes. Meanwhile, there is another county district attorney in Somerset County, Republican DA Jeffrey Thomas, who is still in office despite having been arrested by police and facing trial for sexual assault charges. The Select Committee has never acknowledged that fact. There is no effort whatsoever to even look at the possibility of an impeachment of this man who is currently charged with sexual assault, and therefore there has been a finding of probable cause that he probably committed that crime. It should be clear to anyone, including the assembled media today, that the committee has twisted itself in knots in order to avoid hearing from me, in order to avoid the words that I'm sharing with you now. Now let me say something that might surprise you. There's a lot of Republicans who love this country. There's a lot of Democrats who love this country. There's a lot of independents who love this country. And they believe that we should have free and fair and final elections. And they believe that when you don't like the policies of the other side, there's a way to get rid of them. It's called elections. That's how you do it. The consequence of this unprecedented effort to remove from office someone for his ideas, for his policies, ideas and policies that are wildly popular in the city of Philadelphia, as is clear from these overwhelming landslide wins that we have had and that we have had recently. There are all kinds of people of goodwill in every party who believe in this democracy and know that what is happening here is a straight-up effort to gut democracy by having people who do not even live in Philadelphia, are not allowed to even vote in Philadelphia, remove someone who was duly elected because they, in Beaver County or Adams County or Washington County or Bucks County or some other county, disagree. We disagree in this country. It's part of the beauty of democracy. We disagree. We hold hearings to try to make things better. We study the whole state. We allow people to be heard. None of that is what's happening here. Meanwhile, communities across the Commonwealth, including the ones I serve, have been begging the representatives of the Pennsylvania House, in some cases for decades, including all those on the Select Committee, to provide real solutions to prevent and reduce gun violence. Our communities want universal background checks for firearms and ammunition. We want a ban on ghost guns. We want red flag laws so that police have the authority to take deadly weapons away from domestic abusers, stalkers, and people who are in behavioral health crises and pose a danger to themselves. We want deep and meaningful investments in prevention. Every student in Philadelphia public schools is funded at a rate that's about half of the funding that is occurring in the counties just across the county line. Now, why is that? Why is that when we know that the funding of education correlates directly to reductions in crime and reductions in gun violence? Pennsylvania municipalities have been begging for real local control that allows them to pass meaningful gun restrictions that their residents want. Philadelphia has tried time and time again to come up with its own unique approach because it is a big city. It is different in some ways than certain parts of the suburbs and certain parts of more rural areas. We've been begging for that local control, and the answer that we have from the legislature has been no, no, and no. Does that sound to you like people truly interested in restoring law and order? Does that sound to you like people truly interested in the reduction of gun violence? Or does that sound to you like we will do anything and we will say anything in a superheated midterm election cycle where even the United States Senate hangs in the balance, where control over whether we have elections that have integrity hangs in the balance? Thank you for being here. I'm happy to take your questions. If any of you see a member of the Select Committee coming, point this way. because they can ask me right here, right now. Yes, please.
Have you been given any indication about when they might vote, and what type of preparations have you been taking for the possibility that there may be an impeachment proceeding, next week or in the near future?
We are receiving information. I would say I will not be surprised even a little bit if they go out of their way to vote for impeachment before the election, because this is politics. Even the Republican candidate for governor described what is happening here as a, quote, political stunt, unquote. Go back, check. When this first came about, he said, and I quote, "I hate to agree with Krasner, but this is a political stunt," unquote. So I fully expect it being a political stunt. They will do it in a political way, and that will be before November the 8th.
What about your own preparations? Do you have lawyers? Are you getting a case ready? Are you going to defend it?
Well, there are two parts, of course. Part one is you only need a majority vote you don't. The legislature needs a majority vote to pass articles of impeachment over to the Senate. It is then up to the Senate to conduct a trial. This is done so rarely, it is so uncommon, and it has never been done in the context of we're impeaching you for your ideas, we're impeaching you for the policies that got you elected and reelected. It's never been done in that context. So we do have lawyers who are looking at it, and they're looking at it carefully. It remains to be seen whether the Senate will move as quickly or the Senate will have a more grown-up approach to this entire situation, understanding that we really are talking about an effort to gut democracy. Yes, sir.
Do you think you'll be the last official to face a political impeachment process like this by the House Republicans?
I certainly hope so. I mean, there has been a steady and frankly agonizing normalization of the destruction of democracy. There has been a war on the truth that has been going on, and war on the truth is the first tactic of authoritarian movements and regimes. That has been going on for years. I certainly hope that this nonsense will not be visited on anybody else. I mean, look, I have very deep disagreements with some members of the legislature. I hope they lose an election. But just because I disagree with them, that provides no justification for trying to impeach them. Yes, please.
Did the select committee decline to record the closed-door interview, or did they decline to provide you a copy of that report?
My understanding is that they made it pretty clear they would make their own copies of it. I just couldn't have them. And they would use them however they saw fit. I just couldn't have them or use them.
So you couldn't take any audio recording either of that closed-door session? What were the ground rules that they were trying to set?
The ground rules they were trying to set were Star Chamber ground rules. You come in here, answer our questions, you get no record of what you said or what we asked you. Which, of course, opens the door for them to say virtually anything about what happened in there and provided me no opportunity whatsoever to establish whether that was accurate or not. Never mind out of context. I wouldn't even have the ability to say that's a lie. You never asked me that question. I never gave that answer. Star Chamber rules. That's what they had. Yes, please.
You exonerated a man who was murder last
Right.
year, who is now suspected in a new deadly shooting. What do you make of that?
So, we've looked very carefully at that situation. Our opinion at that time, and I can get into details if you'd like, was that he was likely innocent. And he was likely innocent because there was evidence that was revealed both during but especially after the trial that pointed very specifically to a different suspect, a named suspect on the one hand, and then on the other hand, the evidence pointed very specifically that the phone records for the defendant showed that his phones were nowhere near the location of the crime. So the evidence went in two different directions. It went towards identifying a possible perpetrator, but it went also towards showing the possibility of innocence. In his trial, as I said before, this evidence was not all provided to the defense, and in fairness, not even to the prosecutor. The prosecutor didn't even have some of this. So I'm not pointing a finger at that particular prosecutor in that case. So we have looked at it very carefully, including in light of the new case, and we have concluded that we were correct in saying he was likely innocent of that prior killing. It was a killing where it was pretty clear there was a heavy motive relating to drugs. Innocent of the killing does not mean that we are necessarily saying everybody involved in that had never committed a crime. But the crime with which he was charged, at a place, on a date, at a time, we stand by he was likely innocent of that crime. And we did that because we're trying to be fair. In the same way we're trying to be fair, the evidence in this case indicates that this defendant is guilty of this crime. That the video and the other evidence makes it clear. And that is why a warrant has been issued, and we are hopeful that he will be apprehended shortly, and we intend to bring him to justice on that second case. Yes, sir.
I'd like to push you just a little bit on the popularity note you just mentioned. You've probably seen this poll from earlier this year from Axios. Of Democrats that were polled in Philly, more than 55% said the city was headed in the wrong direction. And the thing that they're most concerned about is how the city is addressing peace and public safety. How do you respond?
Sure, I'm happy to respond. So there has been, frankly, a kind of superficial way of polling this issue. And I know this because we were doing polling when we were running for re-election last year. People should be worried about public safety. I am worried about public safety. It's frankly agonizing to see what happens to victims and to survivors and to the communities they live in when these terrible things occurred. So if you ask people, are you concerned about public safety, they rightly say yes. But if you then ask the other question, the one that I don't believe that poll asked, but that our polling did ask, where would you spend money to fix it? What we got in Philadelphia is that 15% said spend more money on police. 85% identified other ways to spend the money, and over 50% said we should spend that money on community-based organizations working for prevention that are not led by law enforcement. Okay? Both of those things are true. There is a historic and a reflective notion that if we're concerned about crime, then we should go back and do the things that didn't work before. Mass incarceration, for example, doing nothing about reasonable regulation for guns. But that does not describe where this country is right now. It does not describe where Pennsylvania is. We had a surge of gun violence when that election occurred. In fact, right now, homicides are leveling, and understand it's still terrible, absolutely terrible, but they're leveling. So at the time I'm running for re-election, they're still spiking up. And yet we took 2 out of every 3 Democrats. We took, if I recall correctly, 72% of the city of Philadelphia, highest that were adversely affected by gun violence. These are the areas with the largest number. These are the areas where you have fire trucks cleaning blood off the pavement after a shooting, and where there are brass-fired cartridge casings. If you would think, if anywhere, those would be the might reflexively say, well, yep, let's just be even more incarcerated than the most incarcerated country in the world. Let's just be even more incarcerated than Vladimir Putin's Russia, which we are. You would think they would do that, but they didn't. They came out and supported our campaign at rates for sometimes 84% or 80% or north of that. And there's a simple reason for it, which is that we have somehow managed to become arguably the most heavily armed industrial nation and the most incarcerated country in the world, and it ain't fixing things. Those things are not fixing things. We have to go another direction. I'll just give you a reference, and I say this because we have to be willing to look at innovation. We have to be willing to do some new things. I think we should be putting all kinds of money into forensics, and that's why I've been the loudest voice in the city of Philadelphia for 4 years for building a state-of-the-art $50 million forensics lab. We have not heard the voices of these representatives. Frankly, we have not heard the voice of the leadership of the Fraternal Order of Police. I said leadership. I love me a lot of Philly cops. I think they do a great job. But the leadership of the FOP is not actually concerned about solving crimes, which is one of the reasons we have so much difficulty doing that. I have been the loudest voice for those forensics. We're only now starting to see that it's possible with certain grants that may be coming through due to the Biden relief money. That's one of the things we have to do. We have to do modern enforcement, but we also have to do modern prevention. And the really sad lesson of the pandemic and the incredible spike in gun violence that we have seen is that we should always have been investing more heavily in prevention, in organized sports, in open school classrooms, in resources for summer camps and art programs, in education, in economic opportunity. I could go on, but we always should have been investing in that because we saw its value when it disappeared during the pandemic. And what we saw was a lot of young people killing a lot of young people. So I understand what you're saying about Axios, but I would ask people to go a little deeper. This country is not interested in going backward to simply locking everybody up when it doesn't fix anything. This country is interested in going forward, and that means modern enforcement, including modern technology, but it also means modern prevention. These are the kinds of innovations that we're trying to bring. They're the kinds of things that we're trying to do. But when you come with this, this cooked up deal that we don't actually want to look at the whole state, heaven forbid, we should have open hearings where the person we're trying to impeach would talk about how the increase in homicides in our jurisdictions as members of the select committee is even higher than his. When we're living in this, Star Chamber world, where we're all just trying to replicate 1968, it's not gonna get better. If we try to go modern directions, it will. Yes, please.
The select committee has talked a lot about rising rates of gun violence in Philadelphia. Do you think that your legal philosophy and the decisions that your office makes have any material impact on rising rates of gun violence in the city?
Let me try to give you as serious an answer as I can. I think we should always look to science. I think we should actually look to legitimate criminology, and we should not be politicizing the tragedy and the agony that goes with gun violence. There's an article in The Atlantic just yesterday, the most in-depth, most sweeping analysis of what is going on in terms of gun violence in relation to jurisdictions that are identified as reform jurisdictions or progressive jurisdictions is another way to say that on the one hand, versus conservative or traditional jurisdictions. The most recent sweeping analysis, this article just came out yesterday, is that the progressive jurisdictions are doing slightly better. Better. I'm going to say it again. They're doing slightly better, okay? And that's in the short term. I would expect to see the real benefit coming later. That is an article by a guy named Ron Brownstein. I encourage you to look at it. As I said, it just came out yesterday, and it identifies that study. But that's not the only place you can look. You can also look to John Pfaff, P-F-A-F-F, who is a professor at Fordham Law School, also an economist who has studied this. He found no correlation whatsoever between progressive prosecution and increases in crime. A similar study was done by a guy named Jeff Asher, who's a fairly well-known journalist around this, A-S-H-E-R, said the same thing. The science is what it is, and then the politics are what they are. And sadly, what's going on here is some of us would like, in a public way and on the record, to talk about what the science says and talk about what the facts are. But the people who should be asking those questions don't want to do it, and that's why they're not here today. Are there any other questions? Are you enjoying freezing? No? You know what? You're right. I am a Philly wimp in that sense. It gets colder here. All right. Are there any other questions? Anything else I can answer for you? I think we do have some documents. If Jane Rowe, who's our communications director, has some documents. Some of these letters in which we have requested that it be an open hearing are available. If you would like information on the articles or studies that I referenced, we're happy to give it to you, and we can take it from there. But thank you very much.